That brings me to something personal that I want you to resolve if you can. When I first began seriously reading about these subjects, I was 18 years old, so pretty callow at that stage. And about 3-4 years later, I happened to meet Dr. Jayant Narlikar, who had worked with Professor Hoyle. And my understanding from talking to Dr. Narlikar and reading up was that, in a sense, Big Bang was a sort of a local phenomenon which was part of the overall steady state. So Big Bang didn't really upend or disturb that steady state. That was my understanding at that age. I don't know if this is fanciful, foolish, or there is some substance to it.
Well, Professor Narlikar has continued the work of Hoyle and also Jeff Burbidge, and they worked together on a project called the quasi-steady-state cosmology, because the original steady-state cosmology was eventually non-viable. And the reason it was non-viable is because it didn't predict the proper amount of helium in the universe. So when Hoyle did a paper around 1964 calculating the amount of helium in the universe, he said, well, maybe there is something to the Big Bang idea, because helium cannot be produced with such large quantities in stars. So he decided to pursue either the Big Bang or something called little bangs. Little bangs are local explosions. So that's probably what Professor Narlikar was referring to, is that you can create something similar to the Big Bang cosmology, in his view, by having little bangs, which are local events that happen throughout the universe, which produce the helium that we see in the universe through ultra high energy.
Right. So I'm not completely off the mark in my memory, right?
Yes.
All right. No, I'm glad to, this has been long standing in my mind now, almost 4 decades. I'm so glad you helped me throw some light on that. I'm grateful for that. Where does I'm perhaps digressing a bit, where does the idea of multiverse fit within the steady state? Is there any possibility at all?
Well, you could construct a steady state based on the multiverse. Okay. For example, you could say, if Hoyle wanted to say this, he could have said that our universe has its own Big Bang, but that's not really the beginning of everything, that really there's a larger cosmos, and that there are many bangs going on in other cosmoses. And Hoyle was disinclined to talk about the multiverse, and that's because he's very practical and really liked the idea that everything we talk about should be observable. And that was his maxim: do not start talking about things that cannot be observed. Because if you start doing that, then you go into philosophy rather than science.
Right. The only reason I raise it is because the idea of multiverse appears to have gained some ground in the last decade or so. It's somewhat fashionable too, but that's the reason I thought it might be an interesting vantage point on the steady state and multiverse. Since you mentioned, is there any possibility of steady state making a comeback in some fashion?
Well, I think if Hoyle was clever, I mean, he was clever, yeah, but he could have said that the multiverse, as you alluded to, right, was the grandchild or child or grandchild of steady state. Because he could have just said, well, instead of one Big Bang, there's multiple Big Bangs, and the universe lasts forever, and the steady state is the creation and destruction of Big Bangs.
Right. Oh, there you go. That's fascinating. This is it. I'm glad you said that. Thank you very much.